Hey, what's going on, Buckeye Nation? Welcome to another Columbus Wired postgame recap. I am Andy Evans, and I am finally getting down here on the field to talk to you guys about what we just witnessed in today's game between the second-rated Ohio State Buckeyes taking on the fifth-rated, undefeated Indiana Hoosiers. And this one was, of course, big, right, folks? I mean, this basically had Big Ten conference championship game implications on the line. Whoever won this game was going to be in the driver's seat to more than likely take on Oregon in that Big Ten championship game. They're pretty much the odds-on favorite right now as an undefeated team. Of course, Indiana being that other undefeated team, they were really more in the driver's seat than the Buckeyes were. Buckeyes, one loss on the year, as we all know, was out there at Oregon. So really, an Indiana team that had never started off 10-0, never started off their season the best in their 137-year history since their first recorded game in 1887. Never had Indiana ever come into this football game at 10-0 and in a driver's seat to beat Ohio State and potentially go play for a Big Ten title or even win a Big Ten title. And unfortunately for the Hoosiers, that is still going to be the case after your Buckeyes are still in the driver's seat to take on those Oregon Ducks in a rematch in Indianapolis come December 7th, taking down the now 10-1 Indiana Hoosiers, who are 7-1 in the Big Ten and are tied with the second-ranked Buckeyes at 7-1 in the conference and 10-1 overall. Final score, Ohio State 38. Why did I say 32? I got 32 on the brain. I got the final score sitting right in front of my friggin' face. 38-15. I think I was thinking, no, my math's off. I was thinking they won by 22, but they actually won by 23. Hey, Andy, head, behind, take it out, put it on top, and start thinking straight. I guess I'm just so giddy, folks, because Ohio State, this was just, this was a crazy game. 29th win in a row. Let's get that out of the way. Over the Hoosiers. They came in with 28. They now got 29. This wasn't necessarily the first time, though, that Indiana had ever come into playing Ohio State as an undefeated team. In fact, this was the 13th game all-time in the 98? This was the 98th rendition of the Ohio State-Indiana game. And 12 previous games, Indiana had actually played Ohio State unbeaten. However, they had come in with only one win out of those 12 tries, and they're now going to be one win only still in 13 tries. Let's just get into some stats here, folks. Number one, special teams, defense, and Will Howard. Those are really the three main talking points of this game. Of course, there is also the start of the game, which I know had you all sweating a little bit, had me sweating too, but fortunately it did not come back to bite the Buckeyes in the behind. Will Howard, another 80% passing day for the fifth-year senior, 22 of 26, 85%, 201 yards, 2 touchdowns. Did throw an interception, but it kind of wasn't his fault. It pretty much wasn't his fault. On the other side of the ball, Curtis Rourke, the guy who was actually ahead of Will Howard in the nation in passing efficiency, had maybe arguably the worst game, not just of this season. He definitely had his worst game of the year this year, but potentially the worst game of his entire collegiate career, without really diving that deep into the stats and what he did the previous 5 years at OU. I really don't know off the top of my head at all, but I can tell you this much. He was 8 of 18, completing 44%. That's 44%, folks. 8 of 18 for 68 yards. No touchdowns. Did not turn the ball over, at least not through the air. On the ground, Travion, once again, leading the Buckeyes in rushing yards, 68 on the day, 9 carries, 1 touchdown. He averaged 7.6 yards a clip. But who led the team in carries? You guessed it, Quinshawn. 14 carries for Judkins, a total of 36 yards. That's 2.6 yards a rush. And on the other side of the ball, the Hoosiers kind of had to rely on the ground game because the passing game was just not cutting it. Tyson Lawton, Tyson Lawton, sorry, Tyson. 15 carries, 79 yards, 2 touchdowns for the James Madison transfer, and Justice Ellison, the Wake Forest transfer, 17 carries for 62 yards on the day. And through the air, receiving-wise, your boy Emeka Ibuka, 7 catches, 80 yards, 1 touchdown. Carnell Tate, 4 catches for the sophomore from Chicago for 68 yards. And our guy Jeremiah, 3 catches, 34 yards on 5 targets. Everybody else actually had a 100% target to reception rate, except for Jeremiah. 5 targets, 3 catches. However, 2 of those catches kind of thrown into traffic, and Indiana defensive back D'Angelo Pons was able to get his hand on those footballs from Howard to Jeremiah. So not Jeremiah's fault. He didn't drop those passes at all. They were knocked away. But of the other 2 passes that Will Howard did not complete, one was an intentional grounding, which I personally thought he was outside of the pocket, and the other one was an interception that was thrown to Jelani Thurman. It was actually down at this end here, and it was inside. They started that drive inside the red zone, and Jelani just kind of doinked off his hands and was actually intercepted by, what's his name? Jelani Walker, I think. Is his name, the Indiana linebacker. I know it's Walker. I apologize for not having the last name on first name off the top of my head. But at any rate, however, still a great passing day from Will Howard. Like I said, 85% complete, 201 yards, 2 touchdowns, didn't have the interception. I talked about, though, the keys to this game being red zone, 4th down, and both teams' offensive and defensive lines against one another. And really, red zone was not a huge factor today. Ohio State was 4 of 6, so they completed 66%. I believe they came in at completing 71% they were actually tops in the country in red zone offensive percentage. They had been completing 97% of their red zone trips. Literally only one red zone trip had not resulted in a score coming into this game today. 2 red zone trips, including the interception to Jelani Thurman and a failed 4th down. Once again, down at this end, 4th down, they're in a shotgun, Chip Kelly calls, and hands off to Quinshawn, and the offensive line didn't get a push. Quinshawn didn't get a push, and they stalled right there and then. So 97% going to go down a little bit. They were still 4-6. All 4 of those scores, though, were touchdowns on the day. And the Hoosiers, they were 2 of 2, 100%. And both were touchdowns for them. But that really wasn't a huge factor. 4th down really wasn't a huge factor today either. Indiana was 1 of 2, and Ohio State was 2 of 3. Both teams, though, had really stout red zone defenses. In fact, I think Ohio State was tied for 2nd in the country, only allowing 52% of teams to score once they got into their red zone. So the fact, I guess, that IU was 1 of 2. Ohio State's percentage is going to drop down a little bit. And I know Indiana, they had been allowing, I think, 86% of teams, or 86 teams to score 86% of the time once they got to the red zone. But getting into their red zone was kind of a big thing. They had only allowed 22 trips on the year, and they allowed 3 today, and the Buckeyes to score twice. So that's still those 66%. So I guess Indiana's conversion rate's probably going to improve a little bit. But really, it was the lines. It was Ohio State's line. Can they stop Indiana's Big Ten leading 31 sacks? Can they not allow Indiana to get to Will Howard? And they didn't at all. 0 sacks allowed by the Buckeyes today. On the other side of the ball, Indiana, going into 2 weeks ago against Michigan, Indiana had only allowed 7 sacks the entire season. However, that number increased by 4 after their game against the Rodents because the Rodents got to them 4 times. So they came in today still only having allowed 11 sacks on the season. But guess what? Ohio State went ahead and trumped the Rodents by 1. 5 sacks today for 46 yards, 8 tackles for loss, 2 strip sacks, one of which they recovered for the turnover forced. The one turnover that Ohio State got, yeah, it was on a strip sack. And just crazy that in 2 games, Indiana allowed more sacks in 2 games than they had allowed all season long. 5 today, 4 last week against the Smelly Rodents. So I guess it kind of shows you that Indiana, we were wondering, how for real is Indiana? I think we found out. They had a tough game at home against a mediocre Teton team, and then they came here to Columbus and ended up getting beat by more than 3 touchdowns. And their offensive line, I mean, just Jim Knowles cooked up it just absolutely beautiful game plan, blitzing. A couple of different times watching the blindside blitz come from Cody Simon, Lorenzo Styles, JT Tuimoloau got in there, Jack Sawyer. Just an amazing day by the defense. And let me just pop you some numbers here real quick. Cody Simon, 10 tackles, 2.5 were sacks, and he had 1 of the strip sacks. Sonny Styles, 8 tackles on the day, including 1 for loss. Both Caleb Downs and JT Tuimoloau, 5 tackles apiece. JT with a sack. Lathan Ransom, 4 tackles on the day. In fact, several Buckeyes with 4 tackles, including Lathan, who also had one of the other or he had forced a fumble. It wasn't a strip sack, but he forced a fumble. And then Jack Sawyer, 4 tackles, 1.5 sacks. How about your boy Caden Curry, 4 tackles, including 1 for loss. So the defense was just out of their mind today. And that's despite the fact that Buckeye Nation, once again, we were sweating a little bit, weren't we, right? To watch Indiana go down the field on their first drive of the game, and it's kind of been a little bit of a sore subject for Buckeye fans to watch the opposing team take the lead on their opening drive of the game, or just the opening drive in general. But it didn't come back to bite the Buckeyes, right? Didn't come back to bite them. Yes, Indiana came out and forced Ohio State into a 3-and-out. Ohio State opened the game, forced into a 3-and-out. Then they give the ball to Indiana, and Indiana marches right down the field on their first drive of the game and scores to take an early 7-0 lead. I think I might want to run. What? I'm just down here giving a frickin' postgame, dude. What's your deal, man? I think I might go to jail here in a couple minutes. The bird's literally flying above my head, just circling me. Yeah, that's what I thought, man. I ain't doing nothing. 5-0, man. What's up? Yeah, okay. Move along. I can't have him interrupting me in the middle of this. Oh, he's coming back. Anyways, all right, I better finish up before I go to jail. At any rate, and that on that Indiana's opening drive, 2 pass interference penalties on Davison Igbinosun. And in fact, he got a 3rd one later in the game, like late in the 4th quarter. He got a 3rd pass interference penalty. And the Buckeyes today, that was actually kind of the stat that kind of had me a little concerned, because the Buckeyes, 8 penalties today for 58 yards Indiana, 3 penalties for 15 yards. And I saw a stat where apparently, like, the combination of Ohio State's opponents, like, basically all of the penalties accrued together by Ohio State's opponents are the least amount of penalties against the other team, if that makes any sense. Basically, like, Ohio State is penalized more often than any other team in the country opposed to their opponent, if that makes any sense. But once again, nonetheless, didn't come back to hurt the Buckeyes. But last, not least, certainly at all, cannot leave here without talking about probably the stat of the game. No lie when I am about to tell you that, yes, one of Ohio State's 5 touchdowns on the day was a punt return. I'm not kidding you. I am not kidding you. And it was Caleb Downs, the sophomore safety. They had talked at the beginning of the year, like back in fall camp, they had talked about potentially giving Caleb Downs the opportunity to return punts. And by God, they have been doing it here. Like they did it today. I believe they did it last weekend against Northwestern, maybe even against Purdue as well. They've been giving him his opportunity, and he made it pay off big time on a 79-yard return. And here is the even crazier part to that stat, the fact that the Buckeyes finally got a punt return for a touchdown. Do you remember the last time that Ohio State had a punt return taken back to the house? Okay. If you do, and you've already answered me, great. If you don't, I'm about to tell you right now. 10 years ago, on November 22nd, 2014, right here in the Horseshoe, a guy by the name of Jalen Marshall returned a punt, and the team that he returned it against, the Indiana Hoosiers. I kid you not. Literally almost exactly 10 years to the day, Ohio State returns another punt for a touchdown against Indiana. You can't write that stuff and make it up, folks. I mean, nonfiction, baby, is so much sweeter than make-believe. So there you go, folks. Once again, great win by the Buckeyes, and I appreciate everybody out there for taking the almost 20 minutes to watch this if I didn't get friggin' interrupted by the Poe. But they're doing their job, so. Hey, no, I love you, police. I got many friends in law enforcement, so always much love and much respect for my brothers in blue. But till next week, it's on now, folks. Right? Here we go, baby. It is the sweetest week of the entire year at this time of the season. You know what I'm talking about, Buckeye fans. Hey, until a Tuesday at the Woody, no Wednesday at the Woody this week. They're doing everything all on a Tuesday. So myself, most definitely, and hopefully my guy Drew Sample will also be joining you for a Tuesday at the Woody. But until then, hey, everybody, take care, be safe, God bless, and go Bucks.